All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. Today, I'm talking with my friend David Oliverio.
Oliverio.
Oliverio, who is also known as the Preaching Humanist.
Yeah.
You can find him on YouTube. I have the link below. And if you want to stalk him on Twitter or Facebook, I have links to those below as well. And David does his show for the ACA. He's one of the shows that the ACA puts out there. So, David, tell us, how did you get involved with the ACA to do the show, and show us the signs you were trying to get going there?
Of course, yeah. So normally I would put my signs up here, but my little homemade studio doesn't work very well. I was going to have them, so I'll just show them to you. So these are the signs that I hold up on the weekends when I go out and promote secular humanism in public places. The next one, this one gets a lot of attention. And you can see the yellow dots there from the eggs that they throw at me.
Oh, geez. Really?
No. Just kidding. This is another important one that I hold up.
Yes.
Church-state separation. And I had another one. I don't know what happened to it, but promoting science and reason. So, yeah. So what I do is I go out on Saturday mornings primarily, and I feed homeless people with my signs, with my atheist and secular humanist t-shirts. And from there, I head out to a particular destination in Austin, usually Lady Bird Lake, the Capitol, downtown Austin, and just stand where a lot of people are and smile and love on people, right? And yeah, really.
It's fantastic.
Way to normalize it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I pass out literature. My newest one is this one here. I'm kind of proud of this one. The Austin Secular Communities. And believe it or not, we'll get into it in my story, Neil. But I mean, there are people out there that have just left Christianity. They're looking for communities. They're trying to find something to replace Christianity and religion, right? And we've got
the community aspect, everything.
Absolutely. So I've got the communities here: ACA, Austin Humanist Community, Center for Inquiry, Ethical Society, and the websites and national secular groups. There are people out there who never even heard of American Humanist, American Atheist, Secular Coalition for America, and so forth. And I've got all the websites, Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Yep.
And then this one real quick. What is humanism? What is secular humanism? So I have different definitions for that. So I basically go out and promote something that replaces theistic religion. I don't do a lot of debate. We have plenty of great debaters, which is great. But I kind of do something a little bit different. And I feel a niche where there's not a lot of people that do this style. It's all good. I'm just trying to find diversity, right? Yeah, to answer your question, I started this activism, many years ago, probably 15 years ago, on my own. And I think I joined the ACA maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Wow.
I didn't really start the show, the Preaching Humanist show, until I think it was 2015. I ran into the infamous Mark Vanderbrick. Hello, Mark. And we talked, and he said, why don't you come do the show at the studio? So the rest is history. So, yeah, I've been doing it for the last about 5 years.
Awesome.
ACA, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I think I first saw you sort of pop into YouTube. One of your probably first handful of videos came up in my suggestion side, or whatever they call that there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, another one involved with the ACA. So I clicked on it and checked out a couple and instantly hooked. So yeah, you talk about some very important things, like you were saying, like the church and state stuff, and other things about humanism, about how we shouldn't be demonizing religious people, but try and sort of persuade them, if we can, away from these kinds of beliefs, sort of thing, and get more into that kind of thing, which I think is fantastic. And one of my chat people had something that they wanted to say. David is an activist that I inspire to be. So there you go.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's about, right? We want to get other people involved. We want other people to find their spoke in the wheel. We have a
Mhm.
secular wheel that's moving forward. Well, we have to find the spokes. So we each have a different skill set, a different ability,
Right.
and to balance that wheel in motion. You found yours. And I wanted to
Yep.
tell you,
Yep.
by the way, Neil,
Mhm.
I appreciate what you do. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
appreciate you are putting a face on atheism and humanism. You're very kind, very friendly. And we
I
have
try.
to change this stereotype of atheists because believe me, every Saturday morning for years, I get it from all kinds of believers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they do not understand what we are about. They don't even know what a humanist or an atheist is. They never met one person until we
Or
go
they're
out
lied to.
and they're
Or
lied
they're
to.
lied to about it.
Yeah, we have to get out of our echo chamber and our confirmation bias bubble only and
Yep.
get out there and talk to people. We'll find out that we have so much in common because we're human.
That's
and
right.
the good stuff they do is just simply humanism. Didn't
Yep.
come from a god, right? It's from here, from here.
That's right. That's right. From here and from the heart. That's where it
Acts.
comes from.
Yes.
And shit, I was just going to say something and it totally, I totally derailed there, but that's okay. It'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah.
But anyway, so David, take us back, I guess. This is going back a few ways. If you've been involved with the ACA for 19 plus years,
No,
first of all,
nine.
9. I thought you said 19.
No,
okay. Because I've only been a member for 2 years now. So, and by the way, Mark was thinking back when I was down in Austin that they'd like to actually have this show added to their roster, but nothing ever came of that. So maybe remind him next time you see him.
When we get to, I think it would be a great addition, no doubt.
Well-
And I also like the idea that you're giving, especially these younger people that come into this, right? Because I'm an old guy, I'm 63, and you're not too far behind me, Neil. I looked
Nope.
at your Facebook page.
I know I'm 53, so I'm 10 behind.
Well, 10 years, but it's really up to us to really encourage. It's about the younger generation. We want them to have a platform and a voice to find their spoke in the wheel. And you're doing that with your show, so I appreciate that.
Anyone can come on my show.
Okay.
If they've got a story that they want to share. Like, I don't even talk to just atheists. I've had people that were Christians but became polytheists, and I'm also interested in hearing those kinds of stories too, because I think that even though they switched to another belief that even I may consider it to be fallacious, but I was once a polytheist, so I kind of have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for them because I went through that phase. Aaron and I were actually talking about that and having a couple of laughs about how we both kind of went through that phase. But I think all these voices need to be heard because these stories should be heard because they might give people that are watching or that might stumble across a video like this and go, oh, what's this about? And then they listen and go, holy shit, I'm going through exactly what this person is going through. And I had no idea there was a community of people like me out there going through this. So that's one of the things that I do it for sure.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many people. There's so many people out there. Once you get out there with these signs, that they come by and they run up to me and literally hug me. Well, we can't hug now, but close to hugging because of COVID-19. And they have no idea that there are secular humanist communities. Some of them are atheists and they've never even heard of secular humanism. So there are people out there that need to be encouraged, right? And they feel isolated. They feel alone. They've lost their family. They've lost their wife, their children. Had a guy come up to me just the other day, a 35-year-old African-American man, a computer scientist. He came up to me. He just left Jehovah's Witness Church. His family has completely repudiated him. Lost his wife, his kids, and everything. And he's looking for a whole new life and new friends. And he didn't know anything about these groups here in town. Or the national groups. So,
and I take it you gave him one of those?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Good. Hopefully, you'll see him at some point when the ACA reopens. You'll be able to see him there, meeting people and getting to know our community a little bit better. Anyway, so let's get into the story, David. So, when you were a believer, what were sort of the first things that sort of led you out of it? Like you sort of thinking, well, this doesn't make sense, or I'm not grasping, and then this sounds like bullshit or whatever. And that's sort of the dominoes falling, so to speak, that led you on your journey out of that into becoming the fantastic activist that you are today.
Well, Neil, I think if it's okay with you, I'd have to go back to 1957. And I'll go very quick. I do a lot of Zoom talks and public speaking, but since COVID, I've had to speak on Zoom. But my first talk ever on my deconversion story was just 3 weeks ago for the Humanist Association of San Diego. So I had all my notes and I gave a 40-minute message on that. So I'm not going to go that long, but I do want to, if it's okay, to start when I was born, because it's very important to understand that I was born into fundamentalist Pentecostal Christianity in 1957 up in Detroit, Michigan, right?
Yeah.
And my dad was an upcoming Pentecostal preacher. He was in training. So I was raised extremely Christian. I mean, we're talking speaking in tongues, memorizing scripture, going to church 3 times a week, the whole thing, right? Anointing the sick with oil, Jericho marches, dancing in the spirit, slaying in the spirit. So the first 11 years of my life were there in Detroit. And then in 1969, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, my father took a church in Waco, Texas. I call it Wacko. There are more Christians there than people, trust me. Yeah. And so we moved down there, and my father took a little Pentecostal church. He built it up. So my teenage years were very rebellious because I was raised in a very alpha male dominated environment, right? Christian authoritarianism, Christian nationalism, the whole thing, taking the Bible literally, dominionism, taking over the world for Jesus. That's how I was raised. And very important thing for your viewers to hear, because I was raised in an anti-intellectual, anti-science, anti-reason environment. We were told that science is of Satan. Charles Darwin was Satan's progeny. He was Satan's offspring. I didn't know a thing about science or education, anything about anything different than fundamentalist Christianity. So I was in the Jesus bubble, So in 1969, we were in Waco. And I started my rebellious teenage years up to 1976. And that's when I was trying to find my freedom and individuality away from 2 authoritarian fathers. My heavenly father, which I thought existed, right? The alpha male, and my father. So I attempted to find freedom and to get away from this this control in my life. And it was hard, but I succumbed to both of their desires, which was preaching the gospel. My brother and I started preaching. I was 19 years old in 1976. So I came back to Jesus after my 2 rebellious years of rebellion, which was not much to most people. For me, it was just horrible, I drank beer a couple times. And I got drunk once. I was a sinner, And so I
feel kind of bad now.
Yeah, boy, I was just really bad. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And so I started preaching in 1976 in nursing homes. I started traveling to different churches, teaching on evangelism. This is where my passion comes from. I'm the same person I was 30 to 40 years ago. Now I'm just speaking a different message, right? With the same passion. But the thing is, Neil, I was actually a nice guy. And all my cohorts and all my young preacher friends and our fathers who were pastors, most of us were actually good people. We were not these a-holes. We just didn't know. We were wrong. We thought that the message of the gospel of Jesus would actually benefit society and make the world better. We thought that the more Jesus there was and the more churches and the more Christians, societal health would increase. We know quantitative data shows this the opposite is true, right? Secular societies are healthier. So that went on for about 13 years. I got married. And what happened was interesting. You asked a question on what started me on this journey of skepticism. Now, keep in mind, I didn't know what the word skepticism meant. I didn't know anything but Jesus, the Bible, prayer, and the Holy Ghost, right? So I got married. We had 2 children in the early 80s. And I left my father. I was a staff evangelist in his church. I went independent and started traveling and started 2 churches in Waco, Texas. Like they needed more churches, right? The first church I started in 1982 was called New Wine Christian Fellowship. The New Wine sounds very Pentecostal, right? And I started just going out and bringing in homeless people, people that met the criteria of Christ's teaching in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. So I built that church up to maybe 60 to 70 people. I had a couple assistants. And I went and left that church because God told me to move. I listened to God, right? Came back to Waco to start a second church.
Well, now, hold on. Was when God told you to move, was that like an audible voice in your head, or did you think it was an audible? Oh, okay.
Neil, I was crazy, but not that crazy. No, we never heard an audible voice. Now, some people do. It was what we would call, if you're from a very Christian background, you understand the still small voice, like God spoke to the prophets. It's just an idea in the head. We understand, but we thought it was God speaking to us, right?
Right.
So go, my son, and take your family and go start another church. So, but here's what was happening. I started my psychological evolution, Neil. The first church I started was hardcore Jesus Pentecostal, taking the Bible literally, everything in the Bible, right? All scripture given by inspiration of God from the New Testament. But I started having problems in my life because I had a wife and 2 little babies. And I noticed that all these promises that I preached for years as a young man, and I can quote them from the Bible, my God shall supply all of your needs. Well, it worked for me. So I had to start working 2 or 3 jobs at night, preaching in the day, selling mattresses at a store in the afternoon, taking care of my wife, playing with my kids, playing Mr. Mom, everything. Plus prayer time, Bible study time, ministering to people, whatever. And I started getting these thoughts in my head like, wait a minute, what's going on here? All the promises, did not come to pass. So this was during the second church I started. My teaching started changing and becoming a little more progressive. On the Christian spectrum, I went from hardcore right wing, and I started getting to more of a liberal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah, this is a formula I've heard that actually seems to be almost the way people seem to come right out of it, is going on the path.
Baby steps, analogous to evolution, right? Slow changes in process. It was arduous.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But a quick question before you carry on. Mark in the chat was wondering what was your motivation for targeting homeless people? Or were you just looking for easy targets for the church, that kind of thing? Or
no, it wasn't. I guess I'm going too quick. I'm trying to fill up this time here. It wasn't just homeless people. I apologize. It was really anybody that was needy, anybody that was desperate, poor, that couldn't make it through life.
Right.
Those that have insecurities of survival and the quest for that purpose and meaning in life, or those that fall victim for Christianity and other supernatural beliefs, right?
Right, sure.
If you're not born into it and indoctrinated, it's usually because of these other reasons. So it's just people that were desperate, hopeless, those type of people. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So the slow evolution for the second church, my teaching became a little more progressive, and I became a cherry picker, right?
Oh,
yeah. Sweet, nice stuff out of the Bible, leaving those thorns and thistles in that cherry bush, because there's a lot of thorns and thistles in the book, right? In the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
We know that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I love my progressive and liberal Christian friends. They're this close to being like us. They're picking those cherries.
They practically are. They just still have that God thing.
They're getting there. Yeah. So, yeah. So I got to the point where it didn't make much sense to me anymore. I didn't see God's provisions. And then I started having marital problems.
Oh,
That wasn't working out. God was not answering my prayers. I was becoming more and more depressed.
maybe he took her
Joy.
side.
What's that?
So maybe he took her side.
He could have. It could be. He normally doesn't favor women in the Bible, though, Neil, but maybe he did it that
That's true. That's true.
So anyway, make a long story short, it came to a point where I just started outgrowing Christianity. And I will borrow from 1 Corinthians 13, as Donald Trump calls it, 1 Corinthians. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, believed like a child, behaved like a child. And I became a man, became a woman, became an adult, and I put aside childish things. So I grew up in my thinking, and I just couldn't believe the stuff anymore, but I just didn't want to let it go totally. So by 1989, all these problems were happening, marital problems. I couldn't preach this stuff anymore, didn't make any more sense. And at my lowest moment in life, I was depressed. I had to give up preaching. I gave the church up to my 2 assistants. And at my lowest moment, I cried out to God. I went 2 or 3 days at a time fasting and praying.
Wow.
Yeah, I was on fire for Jesus, trust me. And he never answered. You hear Christians always say, at my lowest moment, God was there. Well, he wasn't there for me.
Right.
So I had to start a long, hard journey, which I call my reconstruction years, my education years. I felt like a blank slate. I had to recreate my life with no education, no science background, no college education, me alone with my thoughts and books. I started going to libraries. What a concept, right? Reading things about evolution, evolutionary psychology. I literally had tears in my eyes reading this stuff because it made beautiful sense in how things are in the naturalistic worldview versus magic. So, but it was a very, 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 hard journey. And it took about 2 years to get out of that point of finding meaning in life. You know, like, what do you do when you let go of God belief? When you have no communities, no computer in 1989, 1990, you lose all your friends and your family. They've all cut you off. You're a backslider. I could have gone back to the loving arms of Jesus. They would have accepted me back. And I could have gone back to my easy way out. It was easy, that life of faith. But I chose to stay with what I knew was true. I just couldn't go back. I kept on it. I kept reading and learning. I kept growing, and it took years. But within about a couple of years, I was probably already agnostic. I never had met an atheist or secular humanist. Didn't know anything about it. So by 1995, we finally divorced. I remained in the city of Waco for my kids. They were still in school.
Sure.
High school, I remained there, but I had to remain closeted in my atheism because of my kids in the small town, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I remained there, but I just kept learning and studying and reading philosophy, science, sociology, world history. And I still, after 30 years, Neil, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I can't get enough because I didn't get that with my upbringing for 32 years. It was just Jesus and the Bible. So it's been a wonderful journey. And then from after my youngest child went off to college in 2003, I was free. Woohoo! I'm free. So I moved to Austin in 2005, and that's when I started hanging out with other atheists. I'd already been an atheist for 15 years, and I remember going to Steve Bratton. Hi, Steve. Everybody knows Steve Bratton. And Steve had a potluck put on by CFI and ACA. This is 10, 15 years ago. And I went, It was the first time in my life I'd ever been around fellow non-believers. And I was almost in tears again because I couldn't believe that I was watching people love each other. Well, what a concept.
Yep.
Hugging each other, loving their children, having relationships. They were happy. They were ethical and moral. And I had always been taught that outside of Jesus, you fall into the abyss of nihilism and depression and
Right.
misery. And it was a beautiful journey. And some of your viewers who were not raised this way are probably going, what a wuss. But when you come from my background and you journey out of that all alone, that's where my passion comes from. And so, so I started my activism in, I guess it was 2005. I started going into churches between my clients. I'm a personal trainer. So I drive to my clients' homes. I'll just go into churches and start talking to them. Very friendly, asking questions. And
what kind of questions did you ask them?
Oh, I think the first question I ever asked, it was pretty damn good for never knowing anything about street epistemology or Socratic method. I had two secretaries, the assistant pastor and youth pastor there. And I walked in, I said, hey, I'm not even a Christian. Can we talk? And they said, sure. And I said, why do I need Christianity if I already possess things like love, happiness, joy, meaning in life, purpose in life, fulfillment? Not that I'm perfect, but I do love these things. You know, I study moral philosophy. I love to help people like you do, just like you do. But why do I need this? What is the advantage and the benefit of believing in something that you can't see and following a book that's 2,000 years old? Literally, Neil. Now, that's my first episode of any kind of activism. I just went in there and started doing it. And they looked at each other, and you could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah, I bet.
It was silent for literally 30 seconds.
Probably little short out noises and stuff, too. Does not compute.
Yeah. And they were looking at each other like, come on, somebody come up with an answer for this guy. How do I answer this? And one of the ladies said, I know. I said, what's that? She goes, you could be even happier. And I went, woohoo! Give me the paper. I'll sign the dotted line. And they went, you know. But I had a good relationship, a good rapport. But from that day on, I started going into churches. And then I started going out feeding homeless people on my own. And I discovered the Atheist helping the homeless. And I started going out with my signs years ago, developing my own technique and style. So it's been a beautiful journey. And then of course, public speaking started about 5 or 6 years ago. I resumed that after doing a seminar, fitness seminar, to get new clients about 7 or 8 years ago. I had about 50 people in this seminar. And I'm a retired semi-pro triathlete. I talked about fitness and health. And I retired in 2010 from that. And this lady raised her hand in the front row. And she goes, David, excuse me, but you remind me of my preacher. You act and speak like a preacher. And I went, uh-oh. And something just clicked. I went,
busted.
Hey, this does kind of come natural to me. And I thought maybe I should start doing public speaking and starting a YouTube show on secular humanism and atheism. So that happened years ago, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, your channel, that's, I guess, it's sort of the eureka moment where you came up with the name of it too, like the Preaching Humanist.
Yeah, some people say I embellish a little bit, but honestly, for me, it's nurture nature. My father did train my brother and I how to work a crowd, how to talk. You know, he's very outgoing. He's a retired pastor, and he could work a crowd, and he could tell jokes, and he was like a Hollywood star type guy. But he taught my brother and I how to work a crowd before service, after service, how to speak more emotional and get people's emotions high. So that kind of came natural for me, nurture and nature, both, right? And another funny story is back in the Pentecostal church, I'm also a pianist. And the churches I started, and when I traveled, I brought singers with me. I played piano, they sang, and then I preached. My idol was Jimmy Swaggart. I know that's embarrassing.
Don't admit that to too many people.
Fellow baby boomers, you remember brother Jimmy Swaggart.
Oh, I remember.
You remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I would play the piano, but the interesting thing that I would preach, I would actually control and lead the entire congregation's emotional highs and lows on the piano. I wasn't a great singer. I'm a songwriter. I still write stuff for Humanism and all, but I don't sing well. I'm a piano player. But I would lead from the piano, hundreds of people in the congregation, and I would just pick up the tempo and start building it up. I don't know if you're a musician, but you know this is emotional.
Oh, yeah.
You're a musician, right?
I'm a lead vocalist in my band, so yeah.
So you know that how music touches the emotions of humanity.
Oh, yes.
In the Pentecostal church, I could get them on a high peak of emotional high where we would be screaming and shouting hallelujah, praying in tongues, weeping and crying, shaking, bowing to the Lord. You name it, we did it. And then I could calm the piano down. I would go to a minor key, go back to a major key, seventh key, slow the tempo down, and actually control the attitude of every individual in that church.
It's pretty amazing how you can do that.
They interpreted that as the Holy Spirit. I could go into a Pentecostal church now and just fake it. I couldn't do it, but I could if I wanted to. And
awesome.
Do that. Yeah.
FYI, Mr. Jim Barrows has popped into the chat and he said to say hello.
Hi, Jim.
Mark had another question for you. He wanted to know how the members of your past congregation treated you when they found out or knew that you were an atheist. And did your becoming an atheist have an effect on some of them that started down that path? I guess that's what he wants.
Down the path of atheism?
Yeah, like just starting to question. If this guy could be questioning, why am I not questioning? That kind of thing.
Actually, it was such a strong break. It was a complete separation. They would have nothing to do with me, and I didn't want anything to do with them. I was very isolated. I lived a isolated life for a couple of years. I was depressed. I hated people. I didn't want to be around anybody. That's how depressed I was. I forgot to talk about that part. That was sad. But I heard rumors of things they said in the city because people knew me there as Mario Oliverio, my dad, Mario Oliverio's son, right? The backslidden preacher who turned atheist. So I had rumors that got back to me, and it was pretty hurtful about me. But I just separated myself totally and stayed hidden out for years until I was able to come to Austin and actually totally be myself and come out. You know,
right?
But I had to remain in the closet for my kids' sake in that small town. Otherwise, it would have made their high school years terrible. You know?
Right. Yeah. And you don't want that because, you know, I remember growing up and going through, you know, later elementary school and high school and being picked on quite a bit because I wasn't exactly the biggest kid at the time. Of course, once I grew up, now everyone wants to be your friend because I'm like twice their size now.
Yeah. Funny how that changes. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I became friends with some of the folks that used to pick on me because I'm forgiving. I get it. We were kids. Kids do stupid shit.
Right.
So.
Well, you mature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So did you ever do any of the speaking in tongues thing?
Oh, all the time.
But did you realize that you were just spouting out nonsense?
No, not at all. Here's my cat.
It looks just like my old one.
Beatrix. She's daddy's girl. Yeah. Well, as far as tongues go, literally, no, I did not think it was babbling. We literally believed that we were speaking in an unknown language. And that's found in 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 14, right?
Sure, yeah.
It was a gift. So we would get into our high emotional state of prayer, and we would weep and we would pray in tongues. And we literally thought that we were praying in an unknown language to God, right? So I never had any questions or doubts about that until that last year when I started questioning, having skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we did tongues, we did laying on of hands. I remember taking a group of college and high school kids with me. My best friend from high school, who was a very strong Pentecostal Catholic. There's some Pentecostal Catholics out there. His mother was dying of cancer. He wanted me to come pray for her. So I took the youth group with me. This was in the early 80s. And I brought my little vial of anointed olive oil. Yes, olive oil. That's found in the book of James in the New Testament.
Yep.
You remember that. And I went and we got all prayed up. So I got in a circle. I said, lay hands on Sister Garcia. She was a wonderful lady. And she was dying of cancer. It was horrible. And I started praying in tongues, rebuking the cancer in Jesus' name. And no doubts at all. I knew what the Bible says. Is there any sick among you? Let them call for the elders of the church. That was me. And the prayer of faith will save the sick among you. Doesn't say maybe. It doesn't say if you have a little faith or a lot of faith. I anointed her with oil. Of course, she died 2 or 3 days later. But after all that, Neil, it still never occurred to me that, wait a minute, this says this, but that didn't actually happen. That didn't come till later. You just kind of justify, because faith can justify anything, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Whatever you say. So.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that kind of is actually bothersome to me because, you know, I when I hear people say, you know, especially when somebody's like terminally ill and they're like, oh, well, you know, pray and have faith and God will heal you. To me, it's just like saying, hey, drink a glass of water and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And it irks me, especially when I see people that apparently care for each other, that believe this shit and tell it to each other, and yet they still lose their family member as if, I guess he was in a different universe, creating another world. Maybe he wasn't around that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's painful. It's harmful.
Well, speaking of losing family, I'm going to tell you a quick little story. And then if I may I talk about what I do now, my promotion of humanism?
Absolutely.
That's part of my story, how I've evolved. Before I get to that, I wrote an article for ACA about this incident. I did an episode on the Preaching Humanists back June of 2018. June 20th of 2018 is an infamous day in my life. That's the day my retired Pentecostal pastor, biological father, disowned me totally.
Oh, wow.
So I got a phone call. I was really at one of my clients' homes, in their home. And the voicemail said, David, call me immediately. Now, by the tone of his voice, I thought something was wrong with my mother. My parents are almost 90 years old, 89, 90. So I called my father immediately, thinking it was about my mother. She's a sweetheart. And she's still hardcore Christian. They still think I'm going to hell, but they're praying for me daily, type thing.
Of course they are.
So, yeah, but they really are nice. And then I called my dad back, and he laid into me, and he said, son, I discovered through one of my friends he called it my TV show, and my activism, my public speaking. He said, you are no longer my son. You are dead to me. Don't come to my funeral. Never call me again. I don't want to hear from you, see you. You're dead to me. He laid into me, right? Anyway, and of all the people that caused me to become overreactionary, besides fundamentalist Christians, and I've outgrown that mostly, is not to become too reactionary, is I fired back at him out of a little bit of anger. And I said, oh, thanks for the love of Jesus type thing. But he started yelling. Then he hung up. I called him back, and I tried to explain to him that, hey, I just want freedom and equality. You can preach. I can talk too. And, of course, that didn't work. So, yeah, there is a cost of standing out there and doing what you believe is truth and what you use to help other people see that there is something, what I call above and beyond the morals and the ethics of the Bible and the Quran. That is what I call secular humanism. So through the years, I identified as a strong atheist. I am still a strong atheist. On a scale of 1 to 10, let's forget the Dawkins scale. I use a David O scale, my own personal scale. A 1 to 10 scale, I'm a 9.9999999% sure there's no God. Nothing up there but space-time, energy, matter, atheist on a scale of 1 to 10. I believe there's no God, but I don't know for sure. Now, if somebody wants to manifest God in reality and demonstrate God, which you know you can't, I'm open, but nobody can. I ask people that all the time. Now, keep that in mind. But there's something even more valuable and stronger and above just my atheism. And I don't want to offend anybody here. And if you're still an atheist and you're at your angry adolescent stage of atheism, which I was for years, and I was wanting to lash out and go out and argue with Christians and tell them how stupid they are, you can't help people that way.
No.
So
that's going to burn bridges rather than build them.
Absolutely. So as usual, I learned the hard way, right, through trial and error. So I've matured, and I'm still maturing, have a long way to go.
That's a scientific way, by the way.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Into secular humanism, which is above and beyond theistic religion and even my personal atheism. Because atheism does not provide ethics, values, anything else, right? It's just
it addresses one thing. It addresses one thing only. Do you believe in a God? Nope. Okay, you're an atheist.
Right. And what my show is about, and what I go out about, is I am now telling people that we do have something to talk about, that the grass on the other side of that fence, you may have seen my last episode on my Preaching Humanist show, the greener grass of humanism. That there is green, lush grass on the other side of the fence. It's not an empty world of nihilism. It's not like the prodigal son in the Bible. You know, without God, I have to go back to daddy. My life's miserable. No, there are ethics, morals, love, kindness, the same stuff Christians have. The difference is it doesn't come from that. It comes from this.
Yes.
Shared values. And that's my message to believers now. And I do find a lot of common ground with them, and they're blown away every weekend now. Now,
that's cool.
I compromise with the thorns and thistles in that book. I tell them that we have values and ethics just like you do, but ours comes from ethical values and are derived from human need, human interest, tested by experience and tested by consequences, right? So secular humanism is actually something we can promote. It ain't perfect, but it's better. It's
nothing
not
perfect,
but it's better than these old books, the Bible and the Quran.
That's right. I fully agree with you, David, 100%. And I remember being a believer at one time, early on. It's funny because I always thought that I never really fully believed that there was some God. I remember thinking, well, I guess everyone else thinks there is, so there might be. And I used to talk to this deity from time to time, asking for them to help my friend out who was trying to raise money for a new bike or something. I can't remember what it was. But just over time, finally I just realized, you know what? Nothing ever happens when I speak to this so-called deity, so I got to give them up for something else. And that's kind of when I started going into all the other stuff, right? But eventually you find your way free of the nonsense. Well, you hope you do. Some people don't.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. In fact, the style that I've grown into, and I'm not by any means, please don't misinterpret me, I'm not criticizing those that debate and argue God. We have some of the greatest debaters in the world at ACA. We know who they are. I can't even watch your shows. I get so intimidated. I wish I had half their IQ. That's not my skill set, right?
Right.
There are other things you can do to be productive in this whole thing called activism and promoting humanism and atheism as an alternative, right? But what I find, Neil, is even if they could prove God exists, which they can't, we don't need it. Even if God just showed up. I tell believers, I actually don't need it and don't want it.
Yeah,
Because we are above that God of your Bible, right?
look at the stuff he does.
What's that?
Look at the stuff he does in the Bible. Like, who wants to worship this guy? I don't get it.
Exactly. So the people that I find out there every Saturday morning, it's an easy job. I have an easy job, Neil. All I do is go out there and gather in the fruit. And let me explain what that means. A little biblical term. The Christian fruit, they're falling off the Christian tree. They're just out there. They are coming to the realization they can't believe this stuff anymore. You know, the younger people, younger than us, the millennials, the nuns, they're coming to this on their own through science, philosophy, education. I don't even have to debate them. They're just out there. And I hold up my signs. They come up to me, and they're like, oh, my gosh, tell me more about this. I want to get involved, you know. So it's a pretty easy job. You just go out there, love on people, and promote the groups, the national groups, the other groups. To me, I will continue to argue for secular communities, humanist communities. Mm-hmm. Because the last I've seen, evolution has not brought us to a point of individualism. We are still a social animal. We still need each other. Until we get past that point, communities, we can get more done for the movement in groups. Because you're isolating people. I tried it for years. It doesn't work as well. You can do some good. So I promote the groups. And it's not for everybody, though. Some people like to be isolated, and that's okay.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Mentioning the other folks at the ACA and how they have their debate styles and stuff like that. Do you think? Well, I know that Anthony's not really doing much with the ACA. I know he's a member, but he's not doing much with it. Anthony Magnabosco, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Were you intrigued by the way he does things?
Absolutely.
Did he help you out with yours?
Yeah, we met when I used to take the team with me down to the Alamo. Last couple of years. Ben, Phoenix, hey guys, all you guys.
I had Phoenix on just recently, actually.
Oh yeah, I think I saw it. He did great. Smart young man. These young guys, wow, intelligent. Great debaters, and I like their style because, again, we've got to present ourselves as moral, kind people that don't lose our cool. Because, again, the stereotypical angry atheist is out there. That's what I get from Christians all the time. They say, I thought you guys were out there burning churches down and taking away my guns. No. Yeah. So to answer your question about Anthony, he's got a different style. And like I'd say to people, to me, my opinion, Matt Dillahunty is the king of philosophical debate.
Jim would just say, what do you mean debate styles? We're all Matt clones.
There you go. Yeah, to me, he's the best at that. Now, street epistemology, who's the king? I mean, Anthony Magnabosco. These are all tools in the toolkit. When I go out, I can't use just one tool. I use my style. Sometimes I use Anthony's styles. I do street epistemology, sometimes asking questions. I'm not very patient like some of these other people. I don't have a lot of patience with that. That's why I like it when somebody says, what's that?
It's partially my problem too.
Well,
the patience thing.
Yeah, especially those of us that know the book. We've heard the arguments. We used to preach the arguments, But that's why we need diversity. We need all the different styles collaborating together and encouraging each other, not criticizing each other.
Yes.
And we have to find solidarity and unity in our communities because we all have a different style. I go to different groups in Houston, Dallas, here. I spoke for San Diego. Everybody's got a different style, but we're all in the same family of secularism. We've got to support each other, even though we're different.
But that's what makes it so great, I think, is all these people that are like-minded, but have these different ways of doing it, different ways of talking about it, different ways of coming to their realizations about these things. And they get to share that with people, and they get to encourage and help and speak to people about what we consider to be a better life. Right. And I think that that's fantastic.
I like that. A better life.
Well, I get that because
Chris,
the book
Chris
is
Johnson.
right in front of me. So And Matt's in here, and Tracy, and a bunch of others.
But see, the Christians don't. They need to hear that, and that's what I try to do. I explain to them that, in fact, my new phrase I tell Christians when they come up to me, even the angry ones, and I just did an episode that will be released Wednesday. Hey, Ben Estival is now taking care of my shows. I just send him my show on Google Drive, and he posts it for me on the show. But
oh, beautiful.
On how to deal with and defuse angry Christians. Now, I have them come up to me and ask me, what are you doing out here with these humanist atheist signs? And you know how I defuse an angry Christian? So they'll actually talk to me. I say, well, actually, sir, I'm not even out here to debate and argue. I'm just out here to inform fellow secular people that were once very Christian who miss the good part of church. Now, some atheists who are still in their adolescent stage and angry stage, they don't like that. But when you think about that, when a Christian hears that, they go, oh, what do you mean by good part of church? I go, like community, making friends, having meals together, feeding homeless together, doing the things that you do. The difference is we just don't believe in the supernatural. And I wanted to say all the terrible stuff in the Bible, but I don't say that. So that's how I approach believers, and they are really, quite frankly, blown away. And it makes them really think. And then they start asking me questions, some of them, because they're already having questions and doubts. So.
Oh yeah. So have you ever been asked? Because I've actually been asked this by somebody who's a believer. I've been asked, and I wonder if you have. Do you atheists actually eat babies? No one's ever asked you that. It's happened to me once.
You had somebody actually ask you that?
Yeah.
Wow. I've had some very similar questions, but not the baby. No.
That one, and do we worship Satan, is another one I get.
That's a good one, too. I hear that often. Usually, when you're out there away from just the camera, and you're actually out there with signs in public, right, you'll get what I call drive-bys. So for my business, I get drive-bys all the time. People that walk by, and they'll look at the sign, they'll go, you're going to hell. Or
see you there.
Yeah. Or I'm praying for you. You need Jesus, that type of thing.
No, I don't. That's why I'm here now.
Absolutely. So you get
actually, I was raised Jewish, so we never had Jesus. I was raised as a Jew, right? We didn't believe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You were raised Jewish. Wow.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's an interesting story, David. I was born. Oh, see, when you said 57 earlier, way earlier, it struck something with me right there, because I was conceived, as far as my biological father tells me, conceived in the back of a 57 Chevy Bel Air hardtop.
Oh.
I know, pretty cool. And
I
then,
remember the 57 Chevy, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So my folks were young, 16, I think, and 17 at the time. And my father's mother was staunch Catholic, and the whole out-of-wedlock sex thing and having kids was the big no-no, so they put me up for adoption. And I was raised Jewish. But, of course, I met them in 2000, and they ended up getting married, and I had two full-blooded sisters, and they're not really big religion-wise anyways. So there was never any issues there, but it's been great. And I've had them in my life now for 20 years. So.
Oh, great. You have a good relationship and everything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just went and saw my biological dad. My birth mom passed away. She had something like an embolism or something while she was on the computer, and that was it. And one of my sisters was in 2016 was on a trip with her boyfriend, and she was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was lucky enough though to have them in my life for as long as I did, and got to know them. So yeah. But Dave, we're coming up on the hour. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I know you kind of want to go back to the whole what you're doing. And if you're interested, if your viewers are interested, I know that you probably have posted it. You can go to my name, David Oliverio, or the Preaching Humanist Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And there you'll see all my Preaching Humanist videos. And I also like
to post pictures of my activism every Saturday morning.
Yes. Yeah, they're everywhere there.
And the reason I do that, I'm not doing that for publicity. I'm not doing that for recognition. Been there, done that. I had all that as a young preacher, believe me. Sitting in high back chairs, elevated, preaching to hundreds of people. Had 2 old ladies go around with me and keep the young women off me when I was preaching. Because when you're a preacher, the
You're like a
temptations
preaching
were there.
rock star.
Seriously. It doesn't matter what you look like or anything. It just matters if you're up there. These young girls were there. So they would actually be there praying for me to keep them off me, you know. But no, I do that. I post this stuff for people to just get fired up and to see that all these different groups, to get some people involved in going out there and normalizing it, wearing your T-shirts, talking to people, and showing them what an atheist, what a secular humanist really, really is. Because they don't know. They've been lied to by the Bible. We know the scriptures about that. And I don't have time to quote them, but I can quote them. And from their pastors. So we have to educate. And I think it's my responsibility. Now, you don't have to do it. It's my call, my thing, that I want to do it. I love to do it. And I want to get other people fired up, at least to do their style. Pick something that matters more than you do. That's how you find meaning in life. That's something that will benefit society, which also gives you happiness, right?
Yep.
And you can do it under the secular banner. There's 1,000 things to do.
Oh, sure.
To make the world better through humanism.
That's right. That's why I do my blood donor stuff. Right.
I've seen that. Thank you.
Yeah, I started a group, and they laughed at me when I told them that we could break my dad's record after he passed away, which is why I started doing it. And we did. We broke it by 1,240%. Or sorry, we broke my pledge because when they said, oh, I could pass my dad's numbers, which was over 530, by the way.
530 what?
532 donations of whole blood. And also...
I need to get on my knees to worship you.
Well, no, I did. I haven't done that many.
Oh,
my dad did.
Oh, wow.
And when he passed away, I picked up where he left off and started a group in his honor. And I ended up recruiting almost 200 people in the first year. And they thought that was impossible. It's never happened in Canadian history where a single guy starts a donor group and has more than, say, a dozen or 50 people at max. So, yeah, we did 681 donations.
It's amazing.
And they told me to pledge 50. So I broke that register to pledge by 1,240%.
Well, thank you for doing that. Neil, I have one question. Good. I got one question for you. Have you ever done a video of your story, Deconversion?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Last year in April, I had my friend Randolph, who's also the president of Canadian Atheists. I had him interview me on my channel on April 1st as kind of a lame April Fool's joke, I guess. And he interviewed me instead of the other way around. So, yeah, it's there from last year.
Okay.
I think it was last year. Yeah.
I'll look it up. Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, there's quite a bit involved in that. We went longer than an hour, but it's my show, so I can do that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's your show. Exactly.
That's right. Exactly.
But this is very valuable for people to hear because, as you know as well as I do, Neil, there are a lot of people on the fence out there.
Oh, yes.
And they need to hear these gentle nudges. And when they hear other people's stories, it really does help them. And
it does.
The more they know that we have an alternative, a place they can step over the fence to,
and land safely.
Humanism, which is similar to Christianity in some ways, just being good, but without God. It makes it easier.
Share the same values for the most part. It's just without the baggage of deities. That's all it is.
Yeah, and removing some of the thorns and thistles from the Bible, but the good stuff.
Yeah.
We agree with, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an awesome chat, and I've had a great time talking with you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm sorry I got preachy, but I just can't help it, Neil. So excited.
Exactly. You can't help it, and after all, it is your name, the Preaching Humanist, so I would have it no other way. That's all I can tell you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm very glad that you decided to do this with me. Because I actually was thinking of asking you a little while back, but I wasn't quite as known in the community as I am now, I guess. And so I was a little bit shyer, but I'm like, screw that. Nowadays, I'm like, I'll talk to anybody now.
You shy?
I know it's hard to believe, but yeah, I tend to, it's a long story, but anyway,
Well,
I tend to,
get sometime.
yeah.
Hey, when we get back to the studio in the future, I like to have guests come on. So I get you on there sometime.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I may even be there in person, because if the Faithless Forum goes on for sure next year, I will be there 100% guaranteed for probably a couple of weeks. So there'll be lots of time that we can work something out for sure.
Yeah.
And we've already agreed that we're going to go have lunch or dinner or something together anyway. So,
yes,
which will be fantastic.
Yes.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you do like what you see here and you want to help me out, or help the show out, I should say, because it's really not me you're helping out. Everything that I gain from these super chats, etc., all goes right back into the show. You can do so. I have multiple links down below how you can help out. And also, please go and check out David's channel, The Preaching Humanist. I highly recommend it. I think I've been subscribed to you for almost 2.5 years now myself. But yeah, and I try not to miss all of his talks and stuff like that. And he's got a great Facebook page with all his pictures of when he's out there promoting the humanism. So definitely go and give him a like on Facebook. And you can follow him on Twitter as well. I know you're not as active on Twitter, but...
technologically challenged. What can I say?
But I've seen you post the occasional thing on there. So anyway, guys, we're going to do a bit of an after party here. I can't go for too long tonight because I have some plans that I can't miss tonight. It involves my sister, who I haven't seen in over 4 months because of COVID. And I still have a birthday gift for my nephew here that he hasn't gotten. His birthday was in April. So I'm going to go over there. Finally got the go ahead to do that, but we'll go for about an hour, and David's going to come and stick around for a little bit, and we'll just hang out for a bit. So if you guys are interested in doing that, let me know through messages on either Facebook or Twitter, and I will send you a link, and you can join the both of us for a little bit more talk about this kind of stuff. All right. And David, once again, thank you, man, for joining me. It's great to get and chat with you.
Thank you.
And guys, with the whole COVID thing right now, remember, before I go here, remember to be well, be safe, and above all, be kind. And like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge.